All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Public Safety and Administration Subcommittee. I am, for the record, Delegate Tony Bridges, Chair of the Public Safety and Administration Subcommittee, along with my Vice Chair, Delegate Ivey, also Delegate Acevero, Delegate Stonko, as well as, that is not Mark Edelson, that is Delegate McComas. And so thank you all for being here today. The first agency we're going to get started with is the Executive Department of the Governor. And we will get started with Ryan Green, the budget analyst. Sit right in the front. Oh, okay. Yep. You can speak right into the microphone as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Ryan Green, and I'll be presenting the budget analysis for the Executive Department of the Governor. And as you can see on page 1, in fiscal 2024, the budget increases by $1.76 million, or 12.2%, to $16.2 million.
I'm sorry, can you move the mic a little closer? We're trying to get your voice online.
Sorry, is this better?
Yeah, it is, thank you.
Okay, should I repeat what I said? Okay, yeah. As you can see at the top of page 2, in fiscal 2023, there was one proposed deficiency for $870,000 to support 17 new positions in the governor's office, and the agency should describe the planned function of these positions. For the fiscal 2024 overview of agency spending, we can see that the vast majority of their budget, 86%, goes towards personnel, with the remainder going to a variety of other functions such as service charges, office expenses, and rent. Flipping to page 3, looking at the proposed budget change and where it goes, the majority of the increases are derived from personnel spending, the 17 new positions being annualized, as well as the 4.5% November 2022 cost of living adjustment. On page 4, we can see that there are 17 new positions from the deficiency, and they have currently 24 vacancies. Of those vacancies, 21 have been vacant for less than a year. Finally, our recommendation is that we concur with the governor's allowance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Are there any questions of the analyst? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. We will now have Mona Veda from the Office of the Governor, the Director of Financial Administration. Mona. Oh, yep. Thank you, Mona.
Have, Chief of Staff Megan Harris join.
Bring them up. Definitely. Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. Thank you both. Whenever you are ready.
Thank you for having me. Good to be with all of you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to appear before your subcommittee as you review the proposed budget for the Office of the Governor. I would like to thank our assigned analyst, Mr. Ryan Green, for his thorough analysis. Pleased to note that he has concluded that we have proposed a reasonable spending plan for fiscal year 2024. The subcommittee has our written testimony. The Office of the Governor respectfully agrees with the recommended action, and I'm here to answer any questions any of you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the governor's office, new administration? If not, thank you very much. Definitely appreciate your time. Yeah. Well, first of all, before you get up, let me just say I do appreciate the fact that you all are here, and thank you for your time and waiting until we finish with our last hearing. We are definitely excited to be able to work with this new administration, and want to make sure that you all feel welcome in here with this committee. And so please, if you need anything from us, don't hesitate to reach out as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we're so excited to work with all of you and appreciate the partnership and for y'all taking the time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, that will end the hearing for the Executive Department. We will now move on to the Board of Public Works. And we will start with the budget analyst, Mr. Patrick Frank.
Hello. I'm going to go ahead, considering how late it is, I'm going to skip over some of the exhibits, but if there's anything you would like me to cover, feel free to ask, okay? Start with the first exhibit on page 1. This shows the spending. You can see a large increase in the spending. That is because of, there is a large increase in spending in fiscal 2024, and that is because of grants that flow through the Board of Public Works, and we will discuss them later. There's also a small yellow band inside of fiscal 2023, and that is some one-time funds that were from the dedicated purpose account that go to Baltimore City to help with state center planning, and that grant was just for that particular year. We'll go to page 2. At the bottom of page 2, there are 3 deficiencies in this budget that are being proposed by the administration. $1.5 million is for payments of judgments against the states. This is the state's erroneous conviction program. The way it works is if somebody gets certified that they were incarcerated erroneously, there's a formula which is related to the median income that Marylanders earn, and that person gets a grant. And there's some other ancillary costs too that they get, but they get a grant for each year that they served erroneously in prison. They get years worth, and that's given to them either over 3 or 7 years, depending on their age. If they're over 65, you get it over 3 years. These are grants that have already been awarded, and so this is money that really should go into the budget if we want to continue paying the grants that have been awarded. There's also $3.75 or $375,000 in the budget for what's called the contingent fund. The contingent fund is a fund for unforeseen costs. Some of these are these awards that I just mentioned, and this brings the fund back up to $500,000. And finally, on the top of page 3, the last item is $13,000 for some equipment for live streaming the BPW meetings and having captions. Page 3, as you can see, 95% of this budget are the grants that I was just talking about, and 5% are for the 9 people who work on the Board of Public Works, manage the Board of Public Works hearings and do the work. I'll skip over to page 4 now. This shows a list of all the increases in the budget from 23 to 24. As you can see, the large increases are going to be with the grants. There are 2 new grants for the Chesapeake Bay Trust. The contingent fund is getting more money this year coming up. There's a new grant to Solderly Plantation. Western Maryland and the zoo, which have grants, are getting a little more this year. So those are kind of the main changes there. There was a grant last year for the West North Avenue Development Authority. That's on the top of page 5. That's $250,000. That they're no longer getting a grant because this is now going to be an agency that has its own budget, and there will be a hearing for that later. Page 5 has a listing of all the grants if you're interested. I'll skip over that for now. Middle of page 6, Chesapeake Bay Trust. This is a new program that's getting grants. So we've asked them to come and kind of explain to the committee what exactly they're doing, and so they'll have an opportunity to testify about that later. Also, similarly, there's the Thurgood Marshall Amenity Center at PS 103. That's the school that the late Supreme Court Justice attended when he was young. There's the foundation has been given some money to try to make this a national park. Since this has gone to print, they have heard from the Congress. I think that the group here is here to answer questions about that. I'd rather have them answer questions than have me get something wrong with that. I'll move on now to the first issue is the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore. If you go on to page 9, Exhibit 4, you can see the attendance numbers. From 2010 through 2019, before the pandemic, is a trend line that I calculated that essentially shows some steady growth throughout the period. Of the good years are when there's lots. It's an outdoor thing, and if there's lots of nice weather, I'm told that lots of people go to the zoo. If there's lots of rainy days, much less so. You can see since the pandemic, one of the problems with the pandemic was the best months attendance-wise for the zoo are April, May, and June, and we all know what happened then. So that's why if you look at calendar 2020, their best months, they were closed. Since then, there has been a bounce back, but it hasn't gotten back up to the trend line. Now, when you look at those numbers more, on page 10, Exhibit 5, what you'll see is, interestingly, the general admission, which is, the people paying the tickets, that actually is up if you compare 2019 to 2022. So revenues are strong. Where there's a big difference in why attendance is down has to do with the schools. If you look at it, they went from almost 82,000 in 2019 to about 48,000 in 2022. I'll skip over the next one. As you can see, the finances are pretty good at the zoo. They have bounced back, and admission is doing quite well. Another interesting exhibit I would point out is on page 14. This is exhibit number 8. What this shows is the grants and contributions that the zoo gets from state and local governments. They very much rely on these funds. And these funds are the largest share of their annual spending. Second issue, I'll just show a chart about that, is the erroneous convictions that I had mentioned earlier on page 16. If you go to exhibit number 9, this shows what the level of grants that have been awarded. Now, in 2024 and 25 and 26, I suppose those will increase because I suspect there are more people out there that are going to qualify for this program, and so I expect those to increase in the future. And with that, I'll go to page 17, which has our recommendation, which is annual narrative that's been approved since, I think, 2008 about. This gives us the information for the financials and the admissions data that we asked for and that I used to prepare the analysis from earlier. And with that, I'll end my remarks and answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our analysts? If not, then thank you so very much. We will next actually have up a few of the people that you have questions had questions about. We'll bring up first Diane Hutchins and J. Kirby Fowler from the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore.
Good evening, Chairman Bridges and the honorable members of the committee. My name is Kirby Fowler. I'm President and CEO of the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore. I'm here with the Extraordinary Vice President of Government Relations, Diane Hutchins. It's an honor to be here. I've been at the zoo for 2.5 years. This is the first time I can appear before you in person. It's quite a relief to do so. I want to thank the General Assembly from the outset for the support. You've made an incredible difference over the years for our zoo. I also like to thank the governor, our friends at the Board of Public Works, particularly John Gottram and Patrick Frank. Their analysis has been impeccable and very helpful. You have my written testimony here today, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Just with regard to one aspect that Patrick Frank referred to, we're happy to say that the school's visits are rebounding. For obvious reasons, they were not strong when most people didn't want to do school trips or appear in person anywhere. We had virtual field trips for quite some years, well, for 2 years really, and they were very successful. But we're coming back in-person school trips, and we'll probably be back to pre-COVID levels. So we're happy to see that's happening as well. So with that, I just respectfully request your support for the operating grant, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? We're a quiet group today. It's late in the day.
Great. Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed the Executive Secretary for the Board of Public Works, Mr. Guntram. If you would please join us. It's been a long day. I apologize.
No apology necessary, Mr. Chair, Chair Bridges, Vice Chair Ivey, Delegate Acevero, Delegate McComas, Delegate Stanco. Great to be with you. For the record, John Gontram, Executive Secretary of the Board of Public Works. I'll be very brief out of respect for the committee's time. I want to start by thanking Mr. Frank for an excellent analysis again this year. As he indicated, once again, the board's budget can conceptually be separated into 2 categories: pass-through funds, which, as he said, comprise 95% of the board's proposed FY24 operating budget. These are the board's contingent fund, payments to incarcerated individuals pursuant to orders from the Office of Administrative Hearings, and grants to named grantees in the budget bill. We have a number of individuals from those organizations, like the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore, that are signed up to testify today. The remaining 5%, as Mr. Frank says, goes to board operations. These are primarily personnel expenses for the board's 9-member staff, which has performs a number of important roles on behalf of the state, including facilitating and providing public access to the board's meeting activities, overseeing the implementation of the state's procurement laws, and administering the state's tidal wetlands dredging and filling program. Happy to assist answering any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Told you we're a quiet group this afternoon.
Try to go as fast as I can.
Right. Thank you so very much. Can I now bring up Karen Brown, President and CEO for Historic Annapolis? Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Chairman Bridges and the rest of the committee. My name again is Karen Timer Brown. I'm the President and CEO of Historic Annapolis. Historic Annapolis is so proud of the long-standing public and private partnership that exists between HA and the state of Maryland. We are honored to operate, maintain, and manage a dozen properties, state properties that are entrusted to us. And we're especially proud to have welcomed over 200,000 visitors to these states on an annual basis, and to make these treasures such as the William Peka House and Garden available to the public. I'm in support of and very grateful for the funding that's being brought forward for Historic Annapolis. It's essential for us to be able to carry out our mission and to protect these physical spaces and to provide engaging opportunities to connect with our diverse heritage. We have identified the fact that our true need is in excess of the current support from the state. We are faced with aging system infrastructures throughout our buildings, with inflation, increasing operational costs. Additionally, our portfolio has expanded in the past decade to include the James Bryce House and most recently the John Shaw House, which was added to our master lease agreement last year. I'll welcome an opportunity to take you to see any of those sites and entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you again for your consideration, and thank you, John, for his support as well.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We will now have Nancy Hines and Frank Boston, Signal 13. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nancy Hines, and I'm the CEO of the Signal 13 Foundation. I did submit written testimony, but I want to take just less than 2 minutes to talk about Signal 13 and what we do, because a lot of people really are not familiar with the organization still, and it's been around for 40 years. So the Signal 13, the official name is the Frank J. Battaglia Signal 13 Foundation, and it was founded in 1983 by a former police commissioner, and its mission is to support the men and women of the Baltimore City Police Department. And we support both sworn officers and civilians who work in the department. And we provide financial hardship grants, and we provide college scholarships for their children. I can honestly say it's one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. You know, it's a pleasure to work with it's an honor to work with the men and women of the department who dedicate their careers to protecting the citizens of Baltimore. And I can't think of a more worthy group that needs our support. As you know, it's no secret that it's a challenging time for the Baltimore City Police Department. They struggle with recruitment and retention of qualified police officers. And Signal 13 is a constant for them, and it's a resource that these police officers and civilians can depend on when they need help the most. So we, in 2022, gave out $222,000 in assistance, and we've helped several officers who have been injured on the job. We are currently helping an officer who was dragged during a traffic stop in June and is still recovering. We've helped officers and civilians who have been sick with cancer, with COVID, and we've helped officers who have had a family emergency, such as a house fire, and we've helped 2 of those this year. So these these officers and civilians are also parents. And just like everybody else, they're struggling to put their kids through college on a modest salary. So Signal 13 scholarships help fill a gap and give them a little bit of financial ease as they put their kids through college. So and Frank can talk to this a little bit more, but the Signal 13 Foundation Board really wants to do more, and we really want to have an impact on, police in Baltimore, but we need your support. So Signal 13 has been around for 40 years, as I said, but we flew under the radar up until just a few years ago. And since that time, we've been working hard to raise the awareness and build our annual our annual donors, but that takes time. So, with your support, we can do so much more for these police officers and their families. And, I know it's the board goal and it's my goal to, really make a difference and help improve the morale within the department and ultimately help with recruitment and retention of qualified police officers for Baltimore. So thank you for your consideration and thank you for your support.
Thanks, Nancy. Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee, I'm Frank Boston III. And I am here not as a paid lobbyist, but as a board member of Signal 13 Foundation. I sit on the executive committee, and this month I'll start as secretary and be in line to be the president. So Signal 13, you hear the word 1013, it means officer in distress. And that's why we chose that name, because we're here to help police officers, their families, sworn and civilian, who are in distress, whether they were injured on the job or whether they're seeking scholarships for their children. And we have sought to double the amount that we wanted to give, especially in the scholarship realm. But with market constraints, financial market constraints, we've taken hits on our investments and had to pull back. This money requested here will go a long way, and it's a tremendous boost. As Nancy said, it helps the morale of a department that is experiencing a lot of attrition right now. And we're not just coming to you asking for money. We have our own fundraising efforts in place. We have a campaign that is going on right now, and we're always constantly raising money. We invite you to come to the Crab Feast one time or something like that. It's a really good time. Something I wanted to share with the committee, just to give you some numbers real quick, is 50% of our active scholarship recipients attend Maryland schools. 17% of our active scholarship recipients attend historic black colleges, HBCUs. 11% of our scholarship awards this year are for $5,000. And 73% of our scholarship awards this year are at $2,000 or below. So, much appreciated. Anything that you can do in the budget to help us, and we appreciate the appropriation.
Thank you, and we definitely appreciate all the hard work that you do, especially for the families and those trying to put them through college as well. Are there any questions for this group? Delegate Acevero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, but a comment. Appreciate the stats around the scholarships that you all give out, just to bring to your organization, really folks that are here and the public, the folks who are tuned in, awareness. We all have district scholarships that we give out to scholars and folks in need in our district every single year. I encourage the foundation, like other organizations, to work with the respective offices in Baltimore City. I don't represent Baltimore City, but you all have some really fine people that do, to include the chair of this subcommittee, but pass my bills. But I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's really important. It is good to hear that 50% of your scholarship recipients attend Maryland schools, HBCUs, et cetera. And so just based on that statistics, it sounds like, a lot of the recipients of your scholarships would also qualify for district scholarships. And I think folks should take advantage of that because it's really your taxpayer dollars. We just get to look good giving it back to you.
That's good advice, Delegate Acevero. I really appreciate it because, to your point, often, and it's a sad situation, even without scholarship money, they don't have enough. So, having another resource that they can reach out to their elected officials from Baltimore City to see if they qualify for a scholarship is great advice. And thank you.
Delegate McComas.
Oh, thank you, sir. I apologize. What we did was we made a map of our district, 34, and then who represents what. But because the city is so densely populated, what you could do would be to put like the streets, for each district, and then say, okay, you contact these offices. I mean, it would be a little bit of work, but it would be invaluable for them to help them so they don't have to, figure out who's my representative, because a lot of people don't. know. You know, I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's true. They don't know who there's, because we're so focused on Washington,
Right.
you know, the Washington. But that would probably help your folks a lot. You know, and you're kind of spoon feeding it, but it would really, you know, help them get that extra money that Delegate Acevero is suggesting. So
Thank you, Delegate McComas, for the advice. That's a great idea, and now what they can do with maps, we should be able to accomplish that goal. Thank you. That's good advice. Appreciating all the love.
Thank you, Delegate McComas. Delegate Stanko.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, and I know you broke it out, can you share what the total amount of scholarships that you provided in the previous fiscal year, and the total dollar amount as well, so volume and amount?
Yes, so the amount of scholarships that we actually award, as Frank and I both talked about,
Pull the mic over. Thanks.
the amount of scholarships we actually award, we're trying to give away more. We have a lot of kids who we give scholarships to, and believe it or not, they don't respond to letters and things like that. So we awarded for the year of 2022 about $125,000. We probably gave away $115,000, but it's not for a lack of trying. I've reached out to them multiple times, and then finally I had to go to their parents and tell them that there's money waiting for them, that the children need to respond to these letters. So that's the average amount is about $125,000 that we award. But I can tell you over the past 8 years, if you want to know. So $815,000 in scholarships in the past 8 years.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Is that another question? No. All right. Well, thank you so very much. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for all that you've been doing. Especially to you also, Mr. Boston, for not being here as a lobbyist, but as a member of the board. So definitely appreciate
My
that.
civic duty. I feel good about it.
Appreciate you.
All right,
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Dr. Al Hathaway. Thank you for being here, sir. Good to see you.
I'll be seated, and I'm so excited to have this opportunity, Chairman and members of this honorable subcommittee, just to share a little bit about the progress that we've made with the Justice Thurgood Marshall Amenity Center. We operate with this idea that Justice Thurgood Marshall should be to Baltimore as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is to Atlanta. There needs to be a overall recognition of his amazing accomplishments, and the restoration of PS 103, which was the Henry Highland Garnett School that he attended, was a project that our organization took on. We were blessed because of the support of the state of Maryland to raise $14 million. We closed on that on November 29th of 2022. We also managed the process by which the National Park Service was doing this resource study. The late Congressman Elijah Cummings had that admitted back in May of 2019. They concluded the study and transmitted to Congress a letter of transmittal that was on January the 20th of 2023. That recommendation said that they would strongly encourage that the National Park Service look at this as an affiliated site. Affiliated site is a positive thing. It allows for resources, it allows for staffing, it allows for funding. But we are going to press for a national landmark status, and we're going to press for the highest status, which is that it become a site of the National Park Service. So we have a meeting with their staff on February the 27th. They're coming from Washington, D.C., they're coming from Philadelphia to meet with us, where we're going to show them. They didn't recognize that as a part of our restoration process, we use federal historic tax credits as well as state historic tax credits, and that this facility, particularly on the first level, will actually replicate the feel, the look, materials that was in place when Thurgood Marshall attended in 1914. It's going to be an amazing facility, and we're quite excited. And again, because of your support, we have been able not only to restore this building, but we have gotten support. The Congressman Afume and the federal congressional was able to get us an earmark, so we're going to actually restore the building of Juanita Mitchell. She was a law person, the first African American to attend University of Maryland School of Law. Her building at 1239 is going to be restored. It's going to be connected to the parks, to the work that we're doing with Thurgood Marshall, because we have University of Maryland College Park and University of Maryland Baltimore that are our partners in that project. And we're going to have what's called the Judge Alexander Williams Center for Education, Justice, and Ethics. So we're going to teach law. We're going to involve young people. We're going to also take positions and teach ethics. But we also have Dr. Jonathan Richardson, who is probably one of the foremost experts on gun violence. And so we're going to do a concentrated study in West Baltimore around gun violence, around its causes. We're going to have Dr. Stephen Thomas there, who is doing his work on health disparities through barbershops. That's also going to be connected there. But because of the relationship we're going to have with University of Maryland School of Law, we're going to have a program on domestic violence that will be just a block away in 1239 Tree Hill Avenue. So it's going to be a real comprehensive strategy. We're leveraging a lot of money. Your investment has really leveraged not only the $14 million that's allowing us to do the PS 103, but it's also leveraged another $5 million where we also are restoring the home of Clarence and Juanita Mitchell, and we're restoring the law office of Juanita Mitchell as well. So I do thank you. We appreciate the support. We will continue to press forward. And again, we believe that Thurgood Marshall, what's going to be interesting, inside I'll close with this, what's going to be interesting, because his work was literate, people, we're going to help our students. So we're going to have in there, we're going to have career communications, and we're going to create holograms. We're going to create virtual reality. We're going to create a meta universe. So that his words become oratory, and that when students come and interact, they will hear his words. The question that Thurgood Marshall was asked is, what is equal? Equal was his remark. It is getting the same things at the same time, at the same place. And so this will be that kind of active, vibrant facility in this West Baltimore community, where this investment that the state has made is triggering a lot of other investment, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for also, I know one time we talked and you said that you retired, but it doesn't seem like you really retired, so you took on another role.
Yeah, Chairman, the mantra is that I've retired, but I am not tired.
There you go. Are there any questions for Reverend Hathaway? If not, thank you again for being here. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. Jana Davis, President of Chesapeake Bay Trust. Good to see you.
Great to see you too, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to be joined by Greg Burks, who runs one of the two programs, the Urban Trees program, in case you have questions about it. I'm Jana Davis. I'm the president of the Chesapeake Bay Trust. Chairman Bridges, Delegates Ivey, Acevero, McComas, and Stonko, thank you so much for your time today. This is our first time in a budget bill, so we thought we would come and be here in case you have questions about either of the two programs that are before you today. A tiny little bit of background about the Chesapeake Bay Trust for those who don't know us. You all created us in the 80s as a way to reach communities on the ground. We're a grant maker. We like to engage communities by having them lead the projects, own the projects, and then apply for funding from us, and we distribute the funding out. At the time, no appropriation, you created the Bay Plate, so we're known as the Bay Plate people. For us, the Bay means the whole watershed, from Western Maryland all the way over to the Eastern Shore, and everywhere in between. We say that the funds from the Bay Plate and others, like the ones before you today, go through the trust, not to the trust, because we do put them out the door. 92 cents of every dollar goes to programs. We're known to be incredibly frugal and very efficient. So there's two programs before you today in this brand new piece of the bill. One is a $10 million Urban Trees program created 2 years ago with the Tree Solutions Now Act of 2021. And Greg can answer questions that you have about that. But fantastic projects to go to community groups on the ground. The first year of funding wasn't through you, so we do have 1 year of experience with this program. We can kind of tell you how it runs. The second program is the Chesapeake Conservation and now Climate Corps, which was expanded in last year's Climate Solutions Now Act. by $1.5 million. That program was created by Senate President Miller in 2010. So again, we have a good 13 years of experience running that program and can answer your questions about what these dollars will do. It will expand the number of young people in the program, increase their stipend, and expand to climate and climate justice, which is very exciting. And so those are the two programs before you. I'm sorry I'm being very, very quick, speaking quickly, but if you have questions, Greg and I are happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Delegate McComas.
This may be more appropriate offline just for me, but I wanted to know what the relationship is between the Chesapeake Bay Trust, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I think there may be some other ones, because everybody uses the word Chesapeake, and then there are all these different things. So offline, okay, because I don't want to keep everybody.
Yes, we actually have a one-pager on that topic, and I'll send it over to you.
Excellent. Okay, you can email me. Thank you so much.
All right, any other questions? If not, thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for your time.
All right, we've got our last two speakers before we go to the Secretary of State's office. We've got Wesley Hines, Executive Director from Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, and Mr. Raymond Morris, the Mayor of Cumberland. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll start it off. I'm Ray Morris. I'm the mayor of Cumberland and also the vice president of the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad Board. So I serve two roles here today. Bob Flanagan, the mayor of Frostburg, sends his regrets. He had some cataract surgery and he was unable to come. So so I'm filling in. I'll do the best I can with this. Thank you very much, Chairman Bridges and everyone for allowing us to come in and speak today. It's nice to see everyone in person again after doing it virtually for a couple of years. I'll be honest, I always enjoy coming down for these hearings, quite frankly, to hear all the great work that everybody else is doing. So I've really enjoyed today. Anyway, that's aside. But as you all know, the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad is the linchpin for tourism in Allegheny County, and we've appreciated the support of this group for the last few years, and we appreciate also this year going back to full funding after the pandemic. So that is greatly appreciated. So, and we look forward to your continuing support as we go forward. We've had some really great things going on here the last couple of years. I will tell you right now, if you want your tickets to the Polar Express, it would be a good idea to go ahead and go online or just call Wes and get your tickets for the Polar Express this year, because they're on sale and doing very well. And Wes has fully recovered from the Polar Express this season and all the riders that we had. And so now I'll turn it over to him to let him give you some of the numbers.
Thank you for having us today, Chairman Bridges and committee. I just want to give a real quick breakdown of what Western Maryland Scenic has been able to accomplish. I was requested by the leadership of the railroad to come from outside. I've lived in New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Nashville, large cities, and worked for mostly Fortune 100 companies. So I had a very different perspective on what the railroad needed to do to overcome COVID. Unlike a lot of tourist entities and organizations, profit or nonprofit, the railroad chose to remain closed for over a year. And if you know anything about railroads, I'll educate you very quickly. They're not meant to sit and rust and not be maintained. So when I came to the railroad, the quick transparency is the railroad was very close to insolvency. There was $40,000 left in the bank and about $300,000 in debt, not counting the steam locomotive, which, being a transplant, I'm very proud of the railroad steam locomotive. It's the largest of its kind in the world, and it is living here in Maryland. And as I am now a transplant into Maryland, I'm very proud of that. All those things being said, 90 days after the board made some changes and I came into the position of executive director, the $300,000 in direct debt was gone. The railroad went from no service and being closed for a year to having two of its best years ever consecutively. We carried 47,000 in 2021, and this last year we're closing at 60,000, and we're on target already to hit 70,000 in 2023. And the funding that this committee provides helps provide stability. and we've been able to take things at the railroad to several new heights. We've added education programs for our staff. We've been able to do a lot of new programs for the community, which have impacted restaurateurs, hospitality, and the leadership and the community as a whole for the positive. So it's an incredible thing to get to see 33,000 families at Polar Express, or I should say 33,000 individuals. We took it from 9,000 in 2019 to 33,000 in 2022. So that's quite a jump. And we also won several international awards for the community in doing so. So we look forward to continuing that. Mayor Ray is correct. If you want Polar Express tickets, give me a shout out, and we'll make sure that you can bring your family, your friends, kids, grandkids, and whatnot. We'd love to have you and showcase the community. And if there's any questions I can answer or Mayor Ray can answer, we'd do that this time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Delegate Acevero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a matter of public good, what is your email address?
I'm
kidding.
You can find it on the website.
Don't worry, we'll check out yours.
Yes. And just in closing, I'd like to mention John Gontram. He's been instrumental in working with me. I am very unfamiliar with Maryland's policies and procedures, and his office has been excellent in bridging the gap for me, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you both for being here all the way from Western Maryland. Definitely appreciate it. And I was wrong. There is one more person that we need to see before we go on to the next agency, and that's Nancy Easterling, Executive Director from Historic Sotterly. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Nancy Easterling, the Executive Director of Historic Sotterly. Now, I don't remember seeing any of you there before, so I'm going to have to get you down to come see us. But if you're not familiar, it's a 300-year-old National Historic Landmark. We're a UNESCO site of memory for the root of the enslaved. And for over 25 years, this site has been honestly interpreting all aspects of our shared past, including slavery and its legacy. We have over 200 self-identified descendants that are part of the work that we're doing. Common Ground Initiative, where we bring our community together to talk, formal education programs for students. We even have a Growing for Good program, where we grow produce on site and donate it to local food pantries. It's a community resource, and your support of the programming that we're doing is going to allow us to do so much great work, continue the great work that we've been doing in the community. So I know I'm here for questions only. I don't want to take up your time. I know you've had a long day, but I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I hope to see every single one of you. We're in Southern Maryland. It's not that far of a drive. You need to come see us.
Thank you. Sound like it might need to be a committee trip.
Field trip. There you go.
Are there any questions? If not, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you so
Definitely
much.
appreciate it. All right, so that will actually end the hearing for the Board of Public Works. And now we will move on to the Secretary of State's office. And we will have Madeline Miller, the budget analyst, give us the overview first. Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Madeline, and today I'm presenting the budget analysis for the Office of the Secretary of State. The office's budget increases by about $268,000 in fiscal 24 to $4.4 million. On page 2 is now the figures I'm referencing. Before explaining the fiscal 24 budget, I wanted to bring your attention to some actions occurring in the fiscal 22 and 23 budgets. In the past, the office used to receive reimbursable funds from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services in order to support the Address Confidentiality Program. This program serves survivors of domestic abuse and other crimes by providing a mail forwarding service. Reimbursable funds from GOCPYVS were replaced in the fiscal 22 budget with federal ARPA funds and are replaced with general funds in fiscal 23 and fiscal 24. 2 of the fiscal 23 proposed deficiencies, further down on that page, make it so that a position that supports the Address Confidentiality Program is funded with general funds in the working appropriation. The 3rd deficiency provides general fund support to the office's sales of publications, binders, and data special fund. Moving now to fiscal 24, on page 3, this pie chart shows that approximately 87% of the allowance goes towards regular and contractual personnel expenses. The remaining 13% includes cost allocations, including one for do-it, contractual services, and other costs. Now to exhibit on page 4, this shows how the budget has changed from last year. Most of the change occurs within the office's personnel expenses. The allowance includes the addition of one administrator officer position in the Charitable Enforcement Division, as well as one additional contractual position. Funding for the positions also increases due to the annualization of the 4.5% COLA from November. The budget also grows by $33,000 for software, other IT, and do-it services. The IT spending that appears in the office's budget is critical to its duties, particularly as it relates to the notary database and application system, the charities database, and the new electronic filing system, or ELF. The notary database and application system needed to be replaced in order to handle requirements set by Chapter 407 of 2019 and Chapter 157 of 2020. Replacement of the charities database, which was completed in early fiscal 23, helped to resolve 2 findings of an OLA audit published on June 1st of 2022. The list of findings for that audit can be found in Appendix number 1 of this analysis. Now I'll be speaking about the replacement of ELF. The replacement of this system is critical to the state's regulation promulgation process, which is handled by the Division of State Documents. ELF is the online interface that agencies use to electronically file regulations. Agencies submit proposed regulations, including emergency regulations, to DSD via this system, and proposed regulations are then reviewed by the Joint Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review Committee, so I might refer to that as AELR, prior to publication in the Maryland Register. The graph on page 6 provides the number of proposed regulations and emergency regulations submitted to the the Division of State Documents via ELF since 2018. The replacement of the legacy ELF system was initially meant to be completed by the end of January 2022. However, this end date was pushed back to September and then eventually until November 2022. ELF went offline in early September due to the system upgrade, and the Division of State Documents initially asked that agencies refrain from submitting regulations for a period of time in September in order to facilitate that transition. Between September and November, Division of State Document staff and AELR Committee Counsel from the Department of Legislative Services worked with agencies to create a temporary system of emailing proposed regulations back and forth in order to meet statutory requirements. In its 22 interim report to the Legislative Policy Committee, the AELR Committee noted that there were significant miscommunication and substantial delays during this time period. While the agencies and users of ELF were able to gain access back on November 18th, some problems have persisted. The Exhibit 4 on page 7 shows that the overall number of proposed regulations and emergency regulations that AELR got to see was much lower in calendar 2022 than in 2021. Compared from where the legacy system was in use until this year of transition. It was not until January 2023 that AELR Committee Counsel got its first notification from the new ELF system, and other issues have continued to persist with that. Agencies, for example, when submitting extension requests for emergency regulations, and there's already a non-emergency regulation effective date in place, are not able to do so. And there's other very specific functionality issues that have come up, which has led to some bold language that we're asking. DLS is asking that the office comment today on the ongoing issues with upgrading ELF, when it expects that list of issues to be resolved, and for the office to provide any additional costs that may be needed to modify the system. That wraps up my discussion of the budget change, and I'll try to briefly go through the key observations section of the analysis document. On page 9, there's a graph which shows information related to charitable organizations in the state. The number of registered charities shown in the blue line continued to increase in fiscal 22 to over 17,300. Delinquent charities shown in the red bars also rose in fiscal 22 to approximately 3,400. So delinquencies resolved in fiscal 21 and fiscal 22 are higher than in the earlier period shown on the graph. The contacts to charities regarding noncompliance have also decreased in the last year. The office reports that the decreased enforcement actions taken in fiscal 21 and 22 were the result of a temporary shift in priorities for the office, where they were instead processing charitable applications. DLS is asking that the office comment on how the enforcement activities of the division have been impacted by the database replacement, and also how the agency resolved the related findings identified by the OLA audit. Two of the findings were related to this, were helped to be resolved by this database replacement. Exhibit 6 and Exhibit 7 go over notary public commissions and some data for the address confidentiality program. Exhibit 6 shows that there are about 91,000 notaries in the state, and it shows how many commissions are processed each year. The number of commissions processed in fiscal 22 looks a lot lower than in fiscal 21, a decrease of about 38.3%. However, this figure is misrepresented. It's likely inflated in fiscal 21 for two reasons. That being, there was an extension for deadlines under the governor's declared state of emergency and catastrophic health emergency, and then because of the new online application process, the agency reports that some people may have opted to renew their commissions early when they were able to do so online for the first time. The final exhibit shows participation trends in the address confidentiality program. Originally intended to serve survivors of domestic abuse, the program has been expanded over time to include survivors of other crimes, as well as to household members of an eligible applicant or program participant. The number of participants statewide increased in fiscal 22 to 1,400 or almost 1,500 individuals, and there were 13 new participants due to the expanded eligibility provided through Chapter 124 of 2021. On page 12, you'll see the recommended actions. DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. This concludes my notes, presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Are there any questions for the analysts? Let me just note that we are also joined by Vice Chair Chang today. Seeing no questions, thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you.
Next, we will bring up the Secretary of State, our new Secretary of State, Secretary Lee. Thank you for being here. And you can please bring up anyone that you would like to bring up.
Thank you, Subcommittee Chair Bridges and Vice Chair Julian Ivey, and also my dear friend and former colleague, Vice Chair of the Appropriations Committee, Chang. I'm delighted to be here. I wanted to bring up my team right now. Okay. First of all, sitting back in here is Michael Laurie, the new Deputy Secretary of State, and I have here sitting with me Frederick Smalls, Assistant Secretary of Administration Support Services. He'll answer some of the questions and also respond to the concerns raised by DLS, which we have answered on January 23rd of this year. Kathleen Smith, Assistant Secretary of Charities and Legal Services, Michael Schlein of Division Administrator, and Gail Catring, Division of State Documents. She'll answer any questions that you might have about that division and also the ELF system. I thank you so much for hearing from us today. It's of course, I missed the General Assembly, but I like this new role too. I can go home in a timely manner and see my husband, so it's great, you know. But I thank you so much for all the work that you do, because I know it's not easy. It's great to see my former House Judiciary colleague, Susan McComas, who escaped from House Judiciary Committee. That's great. I bet you're happy too. So this is... Okay. So, of course, this is my first hearing, and I take this new role very seriously because it's not just an opportunity to serve as an ambassador for the state of Maryland, but also because our agency provides so many important and vital services to all different Marylanders. And it's a pleasure to present the budget of the Office of Secretary of State for FY 2024. Our office mission remains providing our citizens with information, services, and assistance relating to constitutional, statutory, and regulatory functions assigned to our agency. Just allow me to provide some brief highlights about some of our accomplishments of our divisions over the past fiscal year before we get into any staff analysis. From certification of documents for international use to the production of official publications containing our Maryland regulations, the registration of charitable organizations, and the processing of applications for the notary public, our office manages a real broad range of duties with superior customer services as our guiding North Star. We had received a 99% satisfaction from our customers the previous year. Additionally, as you are aware, the office provides support to promote Maryland's expanding role in international affairs by representing the executive department in the state in diplomatic and related activities. Tomorrow we'll see the president of Bosnia. So if you want to join us, we'll be here at 2 o'clock in the silver room, okay? Only if you want to, okay? You'll probably engage in hearings. Moving through our division-led projects, let me start with the Division of State Documents, which we refer to as DSD, which is in the process of a system modernization efforts for the electronic filing system, which you all know as ELF. This project was initiated by the last administration with the aim of enhancing the process of when you submit, you review, approve, and publish administrative regulations, including the Code of Maryland Regulations, as you all know as COMAR. DSD offers electronic subscriptions to COMAR in addition to the print subscriptions, and versions of the Maryland Register and COMAR are free now. The Charities and Legal Services Division includes many important functions such as regulating notaries public, which is an important function too. The division regulates 91,000 notaries public who are issued commissions for a term of 4 years. Of note, in 2022, our wonderful General Assembly passed SB 317, which allows for remote notary acts to be performed on paper documents when the notary has personal knowledge of the identity of the signer, and it removes restrictions on remotely notarizing wills and trusts instruments, and that was brought about because the Maryland Bar Association Wills and Trust Division had requested that they wanted it, okay? Allows for the Secretary of State to increase the fee a notary public may charge in such an act, authorizes our office to prescribe methods for a reasonable confirmation of a tangible record, updates regulations, increase the maximum fees notaries publics may charge, including fees for the remote online notarizations, assisting notaries to recover technology costs associated with the remote notarization platforms, and regulations have been effective since November 14th. And notably, these measures permit an increase in the allowable fees charged for the traditional pen and ink notarization from $6 to prior maximum of $4. They also allow for an increase of fees charged for remote notarizations to $25 from what we used to have $4, and requires notaries to perform remote notary acts on tangible records to file form with the Secretary of State acknowledging certain obligations regarding the identification of the remotely located individual who requests a remote notarization for a tangible record. And the new notary database modernization is nearly complete. The Charity Division registers and regulates charities and professional fundraisers under the Maryland Solicitations Act, and the division has registered 18,000 charities. These charities range from small to volunteer-run organizations to large multi-million-dollar nonprofits. There were 162 enforcement actions for charities with delinquent registrations in FY22. The new charity database for online registration has been completed and is operating. The Maryland charity campaign, the state's workplace giving program, raised $1,981,346, 99% of our goal. And this was pretty good, especially during an election year when employee giving is historically down. And among other accomplishments, the agency processed extraditions, commutations, and pardons for the governor. An astonishing 442 extraditions were processed during FY22. And there were also 11 town halls conducted for charitable organizations, which is great outreach, notary publics, and general public. Nearly 2,800 constituents attended those town halls during 2022, and more than 6,300 have viewed town hall recordings posted on our website. So we're making huge outreach. And finally, the Address Confidentiality Program, which we refer to as ACP, currently has 1,544 active participants enrolled in a program that shields the address of individual survivors of intimate partner violence and sex trafficking. And it also shields 69 deeds. And I'm really proud of this because I sponsored legislation that allowed this to innovative program to function when I was in the state Senate. We also have trained hundreds of certified application assistants which professional victim service providers trained by ACP staff to pre-qualify and refer program applicants. In fiscal year 2022, ACP eligibility expanded to include any threatened Maryland resident, regardless of their relationship to the would-be perpetrator. And 7 applicants have been approved for the program participation under this new provision. We know this is critical for survivors of violence to be able to have this service. So in conclusion, I wanted to sum up our review of the governor's operating budget. My recommendation, of course, is to concur with the governor's allowance, and the Office of Secretary of State agrees with their recommendations. And if you have any questions, my team here is to answer any questions that you might have. And thank you again.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. And our apologies once again for the wait from earlier today.
Well, this is better than JPR. Oh, gosh, is this recorded?
Are there any questions for the Secretary or the Secretary of Staff? Secretary McComas, I'm giving you an upgrade already, huh? Delegate McComas.
I just wanted to make sure you still allow the judges, if they want to go into this confidential program, they can, the circuit and the district court judges, correct?
Yeah, I believe anybody can go. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I
yes.
just double check it.
Yes, thank you.
Delegate Acevedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, just a comment to welcome Secretary Lee to the position and to this subcommittee. It is so good to see you, as always, now in your new capacity. And I say this without reservation, certainly my favorite cabinet secretary. But yes, appreciate you coming forward, looking forward to, working with your office and your team, in the years and fiscal years to come. So thank you so much, and congratulations again, Madam Secretary. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Delegate. And I look forward to working with all these team members and of this wonderful committee and subcommittee. I hope that we can be partners moving forward. Thank you again for the honor and privilege being able to present this to you today.
Thank you, and thank you once again for being here. I'm sure, especially with the ELF system, if you'll let us know of any additional needs that you may have with that system, we are a partner, and if there's a way that we can help, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you all. That will end the hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard somebody had a question. Nope. All right. I'm not trying to keep you all here longer than you need to be. That'll end the hearing for the Secretary of State. We'll now move on to Alcohol and Tobacco Commission, and we will have the analysis by Morgan Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
I'm Morgan Smith, and I'm presenting the budget analysis for Alcohol and Tobacco Commission today. On page 1, you'll see the operating budget summary. In fiscal 2024, the budget increases by a little over $24,000, or 0.4%, to $5.8 million. Moving on to page 2, Exhibit 1 shows the overview of agency spending in fiscal 2024.
Of their proposed $5.8 million, 87% is used for their 39 personnel. That is 19 who work in field enforcement, and then another 20 who are mostly on the administrative side. Flipping to page 3, and slow me down if I move too fast. On page 3, you'll see the major changes in the budget. The biggest change this year was $157,000 for regular personnel costs and retiree health insurance that we lumped together. Please note that there is approximately $54,000 in the budget this year for the annualization of the November 2022 4.5% COLA. The changes across ATC are partially offset by the end of the one-time costs last year for the vehicle transfer costs from the Comptroller's Office to ATC. Over on page 4, at the end of the Where It Goes chart, you'll see personnel data. ATC this year did not have any changes in their personnel, so nothing to report there. And then moving to page 5, the first observation that DLS makes is regarding the transfer of the Medical Cannabis Commission to ATC. As you probably already know, Chapter 26 of 2022 expressed the intent of the General Assembly to transfer MMCC to ATC in the event that the constitutional amendment passed, which it did. My understanding is that ATC and MMCC have been working collaboratively to determine how personnel will move and how that transfer will happen. So they've been talking about how they merge their administrative functions and things along those lines. DLS notes that the fiscal 2024 budget does not reflect a transfer of funding from MMCC to ATC. And so we ask that the agency comment on the process of the transfer of that funding and an estimated date for that funding consolidation. On page 6, you'll see observation 2 in Exhibit 3. Exhibit 3 highlights ATC's managing for results data. Of the goals of ATC, one is to deter the possession, sales, and transportation of illegal tobacco and alcohol products through inspections. They aim to conduct inspections equivalent to 15% and 9% of total tobacco and alcohol product retailers, respectively. In fiscal 22, ATC inspected 19% of tobacco retailers and 10% of alcohol retailers, which did meet their goal. However, this is a decline from the prior fiscal year where they inspected 58% and 27% of tobacco and alcohol retailers, respectively. ATC has advised that this change in inspection activity was primarily due to changes in staffing during the transition from the Comptroller's Office to ATC. Skipping to page 8, I do want to note that ATC did have one JCR response from the prior fiscal year's Joint Chairman's Review. They were granted an extension to March 1st, so that is still forthcoming. And then finally on page 7, you'll see DLS's recommendation to concur with the governor's budget. This concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Are there any questions for the analyst? All right, if not, thank you very much for your analysis. We'll next bring up Mr. Tom Akris, Bill George, and Jeff Kelly. Good evening. Thank you all again for your patience. Appreciate you being here, and please start whenever you're ready.
Thank you for bumping us from number 5 to number 4. Appreciate that. Please appreciate that too. Good evening, Mr. Chair Bridges and Vice Chair Ivey and members of the Public Safety and Administration Subcommittee. My name is Jeff Kelly, and I'm currently the Executive Director of the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission, and I'm joined at the table with Bill George, who is the Director of our Field Operations Division, and Tom Akris, who's the Director of our Legal and Legislative Division, and I would say Jeff Hann is with us also there, who is our Assistant Director of the Legal and Legislative Division. I'll say first, the reason we are here today is, so if you have a problem, you need some help, you get a hold of one of us and you're going to get your problem solved. So this is the team that can make, you're not talking to the wrong person if you're talking to any one of us. So I just wanted to put that out there. And thanks for really giving us a shot at explaining our budget. And I have to say, first of all, I'm obviously in support of the governor's allowance for our budget. We're getting what we asked for, and there haven't been any changes. And the recommendation from DLS appears to be the same, so I'm grateful for that. I do have to say I'm very grateful to Ms. Morgan Smith, the analyst. This is our second year of actually being able to contribute to our own budget. The first 2 years it was done for us, and we had no input. Last year we had some input. We asked for an increase in staffing. This year we had some input and asked to remain whole. And I have to say Ms. Smith has been just an excellent partner. She's been collaborative with us. I feel like she wants to work with us. And she treats her constituency, which I think is you, very well. You are definitely front and center in her mind. And so are the citizens of the state. So we feel very well served by having her as your DLS analyst for us, and we're grateful for that. Very quickly, the ATC, Alcohol Tobacco Commission, was created in 2019 by an act of the Maryland General Assembly, and it was to take place in July of 2020. Enter COVID-19. So that delay, that process of starting up was delayed by 6 months, and we actually came into existence on January 1st, 2021. So we're just celebrating 2 years in business. Goal was to try and set up a new agency very quickly that caused minimal to no disruption to the existing industries of the alcohol and tobacco entities, and to make it, from their perspective, as much as we could, a seamless transfer. And we think we did that by really lack of complaining from them, and suspect that you didn't get a lot of complaints yourself, I hope, because we worked very hard to make certain that would just be a smooth transition. I do want to address the comment that Ms. Smith made relative to the number of inspections we completed in 2022 to 2023. Quite frankly, in 2022, we were part of the Comptroller's office then, and those numbers reflect when we were there. We had a division that was somewhere between 65 and 70 people, and we just had a lot of people to do these inspections. When we moved to the ATC, we reduced by about a third the people that were actually out in the field able to do these inspections. So proportionally, we reduced our goals, our targets. We did meet or exceed those targets. And we've done even better. We're on a track to do even better this year. For the first 6 months, we're up to about 75% as opposed to 50%. But something else that was kind of interesting last year, as I mentioned, you gave us 7 new positions in the field. Thank you for that. And you gave us 1 new administrative position to help us with some administrative licensing work and trade practice work. And I just want to tell you a couple little stories of what we did with those 7 extra people. We fill all of our vacancies with those positions you gave us last year. And again, thank you very much for that. We were able to maintain our status for for inspections, making sure that we're inspecting as many as we can of the 8,000 or so retail tobacco locations, alcohol locations and the 6,000 or so retail tobacco locations, which we share responsibility with local enforcement, local departments of health, or local liquor boards in these, but it's been a big help. But the other thing that we really got to do this year, and maybe it's because we've been a little bit successful, we get more requests, is to help you and your communities and your neighbors. Back to the commercial thing. We were asked to come in back in the spring to help Fells Point, who the previous year was having a really bad time during the spring and the summer and early fall with people who are essentially opening up outdoor alcohol markets in the square and all around the area and creating crimes as serious as homicide. And so there have just been so many attempts to do something. The public was crying about this, just really begging for help. The General Assembly was begging for help. So we were able to partner with the mayor's office and several agencies in Baltimore City government and spend about 2 nights. And we went up for nights, and we went up on Fridays or Saturdays or Sundays. And we went up at as I say, night times, maybe 7, 8 o'clock until about 2 or 3 in the morning, twice a week on weekends throughout the summer. And I think we made an impact. And the impact we make is significant in that we are able to remove that problem that day, but we're not doing something that's so horrific people are scarred forever. In fact, they're not scarred at all. What we're doing is finding people who are conducting these open-air alcohol markets, approaching them and asking a simple question. Do you have a business license? It's a requirement, but it's a small requirement, and it's enough of one for us to interrupt what's happening and to say, if you don't have a business license, we're going to write you a ticket. It's a ticket. They get a ticket and we seize what they're selling, which is generally illegal alcohol or contraband alcohol to begin with in the manner that they're seizing it. And we stop that problem for the night. Might pop up again, but we were doing that continually and we were finding pretty good success out of that. So that was one area that we were able to spend some time in. Another area we spent some long-term investigation in was in Silver Spring. They had issues with hookah bars. We were able to go down with Montgomery County's, several of their agencies, and through a little task force, spend a lot of time down there doing investigations and shut down and impact some of these illegal operations. We were doing the same thing in Inner Harbor.
West North Avenue.
No, that's it. Inner Harbor area. No. I'll go to West North Avenue then. I'll come back to it, thanks. West North Avenue, really having some bad problems with some very serious crime. The crime isn't caused by necessarily your alcohol establishments or your tobacco establishments, but oftentimes they're the epicenter of where some of it generates. They're not the cause of it, but people congregate there, and it comes from that. So we had received we were one of many agencies who received a request for help from an elected official saying, can you please do anything about these tobacco places? Nobody's doing anything. We identified 12 potential problems in that area, and over a period of a few weeks, we went out, visited each one, did some very thorough inspections, made considerable seizures of contraband product. And we don't know to what extent we've quieted it down there, but we've been making that effort, and we're continuing to do that as well. That was Federal Hill. Same kind of problems as Fells Point was having, very similar, and we spent some time up there as well. And the last one I want to mention, and this isn't the last one we did, but it's a fun one. Friday. We were in, Mount Rainier. Thank you. Mount Rainier. And we seized 1,500 pounds of raw tobacco. And now, first of all, that's a huge amount. If you ever want to see it, we're right across the street in the basement. I'd love to show off our vaults to you where we have a bunch. You would not believe what we have down there with contraband, alcohol, and tobacco. Love to show it off to you. 1,500 pounds of raw tobacco. And what this fellow was doing, he's in an apartment. He had retail stores that he would sell to, and he had his own. But he had this stuff in he had some of it in the store and some of it in his apartment. But what he was doing is taking this raw tobacco that he bought for $21,000, and he had 200,000 Ziploc bags and 200,000 counterfeit labels from an actual tobacco product, and he was grinding the stuff up in his apartment and bagging it and hoping to sell it. And if he sold it all successfully, which he didn't, because we had some pretty good information that put us there shortly after he got the delivery, it would have been $2 million. He was going to gross $2 million on that stuff. Nobody pays attention because it's just tobacco, so who cares? It's $2 million. $2 million that our retailers aren't getting. That represents, wow, an awful lot of tax money that we're not getting. And this product was ground in his apartment. So how clean is that? How much of a potential public safety hazard is it? Not only do we found a lot of other stuff, but that was all in this fiscal year. So if you want to hear it, come back next year, and we'll be making another pitch and hopefully having some very interesting parts of this story to tell you. Lastly, Ms. Smith asked us to comment on the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, and she kind of already said what I was going to say. As she mentioned, the General Assembly stated its intent that if the referendum passed with adult use cannabis, then we would become the successor agency to the Cannabis Commission, and we would combine, we would merge. Over the summer, we met quite a bit, studied how we would bring these two agencies together. We've come up with an organizational chart for that. We assembled all of that with a list of recommendations that the General Assembly asked us to address specifically. That report was due by January 1st. We actually completed it end of October, early November, submitted it to the General Assembly, the governor, and DLS as required, and we also submitted a copy to the House of Delegates work group, cannabis work group. So if that is still the General Assembly's desire that the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission assume responsibility for cannabis and perhaps even adult use if that would be the case, at least relative to the medical cannabis, because that's ongoing, and we'd want to do for them what we did for the alcohol and tobacco industries, meaning seamless transition. We'd ask for some kind of budget language that would secure the funding of the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission would be then also transferred simultaneous with the Cannabis Commission to the Office of the Executive Director for ATC. So we would ask that happen concurrently. And that's really it for my presentation. Happy to take any questions. Call us if you need help. We absolutely can. We can get in there and do something for you. So call us if you need some help. We're happy to do that too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Director. Any questions for this group? I know I have seen the report that you mentioned. If you can send the report maybe to the rest of the members of this subcommittee, I think that would be helpful for them as well.
Certainly will.
Seeing no other questions. All right. Thank you very much. Definitely appreciate you being here, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
That will end the hearing for the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission. They're not here. So now we'll move on to the Maryland Tax Court, and we will start with Jacob Polikoff, our budget analyst. And ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, there will be no one else here, so we are going to end with the budget analyst. So if you do have any questions about Maryland Tax Court, this is your time to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great to be here. Going to start today with just a quick overview of the Maryland Tax Court. Tax Court is an independent state agency tasked with providing the highest level of administrative review on the decisions of Maryland's taxing authorities. Decisions appealed to the MTC include those from the Comptroller of Maryland, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, and local collectors, among others. Appeals from the MTC are then directed towards the circuit courts. MTC is composed of 5 judges who are appointed by the governor for 6-year terms. And the overall goal is to provide taxpayers and taxing authorities with efficient and fair hearings regarding any tax issue. You'll see on the first page that the fiscal 24 budget increases $15,885 to $953,714. That's an increase of 1.7%. Moving over to page 2, Exhibit 1 in the middle of the page will show you the breakdown of agency spending, showing that most of the spending by this agency is in fact on personnel. That's followed by charges for contractual and state service expenses, then equipment and supplies and materials, and then an assortment of other expenses. Personnel taking up 91% of the budget, though. On to page 3, we'll see the proposed change. As I mentioned, that's 1.7% increase over the fiscal 2023 working appropriation. The largest changes this year were an increase in reclassification expenses, reclassification of positions, and then a decrease in accrued leave payout due to that not being needed this year. And then an assortment of other changes in the Department of Information Technology Services allocation, replacement of data processing equipment, and then other supplies, as long as some increase to in and out of state travel. On to page 4, we'll see in the personnel data section that there is one vacancy right now. That one vacancy was created by a retirement at the end of calendar 2022, but there is no change to the requested number of positions this year. On page 5, the key observation in this report is an observation of clearance rates at the tax court falling as the number of appeals slightly increases. This increase follows 2 years of decline. The number of appeals filed in fiscal 2022 increased by nearly 11% compared to fiscal 2021. This occurred as the agency is responsible for issuing decisions to be heard on appeal worked through their COVID-19 related case backlogs. While the tax court itself is not currently functioning with backlog, cases are projected to further increase in fiscal 2023 as backlog reduction occurs in referring agencies. This increase in appeals seen in fiscal 2022 was accompanied by decreases in the 8 and 12-month clearance rates for cases, and you can see that in Exhibit 3. The 8-month clearance rate, which had previously fallen from 74% in fiscal 2020 to 54% in fiscal 2021, decreased again in fiscal 2022, as only 45% of cases were cleared within 8 months. The benchmark goal set by the tax court for the 8-month clearance rate is 90%. That rate was last achieved in fiscal 2010. The 12-month clearance rate also decreased 16 percentage points, down to 71% of cases in fiscal 2022. With that, the tax court should comment on how the remaining COVID-19 backlog in other agencies is impacting their ability to operate efficiently in terms of their benchmarks, and how clearance rates are expected to rise to meet these benchmarks absent any changes in operational procedure or organizational structure. On page 7, you'll find that the recommendation is to concur with the governor's allowance. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your analysis. I will mention that the agency did send in their written testimony. There's just no public testimony today. And so we'll start with Delegate Stanko.
This is an ignorance thing for me. If the comptroller, thank you, Mr. Chair. If the comptroller if there is an appeal that's filed to the comptroller, and the comptroller then, does it immediately go to you, or does it start with the comptroller? Like, let me step back. If there's a $5,000 outstanding bill the comptroller is saying it's owed to a Maryland resident, and that person then appeals to that issue to the comptroller, does it immediately go to the tax court, or does the comptroller review it first and then decline, and then it goes to the tax court?
So it's my understanding, and I would ask the agency to confirm this. It's my understanding, though, that the disagreement between the comptroller and the person or group being taxed, that disagreement goes to the tax court after there's a disagreement between the taxing authority and the individual or group to be taxed. But I would ask the Maryland tax court to confirm my understanding of that.
Do you mind if I ask you a follow-up? Do you know what the average turnaround time is on an appeal? And I know we're late in the night, but just curious.
No, absolutely. On page 5 of the report, the tax court clearance rates, there's not an there's not an average, but I could provide that for you later on.
I would appreciate that. Yep.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me asking, are you looking for an average over the past couple of years?
Yeah, let's say the last 24 months. If someone puts an appeal, what's the turnaround time that they get their answer?
Okay.
Thank you.
Delegate, we'll ask the agency to provide a response to those questions as well.
Thank you. My ignorance.
No, that's fine. Any other questions for the analyst? All right. If not, thank you so very much. Definitely appreciate you being here, and thanks for your patience as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all.
All right. That will end the hearing for Maryland Tax Court, and that will end the Public Safety and Administration Subcommittee hearing for today. Thank you all. Have a good evening.